Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. This is NASA's Thread. Today I'll be showing you how to make this stunning 180 maxi flare skirt with side pockets. If this is something you find intriguing, do well to keep watching. Give this video a thumbs up and let's get right into this tutorial. So to start off, I have my fabric. I'm using a thick Duchess, and I have about 3 yards of this, and I have my zip. So these are the important things you'll be needing for this tutorial, and your hook and eye. So the first thing I did was to fold my fabric. Now I'm going to show you how to do that. So using my paper, you're going to fold into two first, and then you fold it again into a triangle form. Now this is because we are cutting both the front and the back together. So like I said, you fold your fabric into two. Remember, my fabric is 3 yards, so it's 3 yards complete the way I have it on my table. I folded it into two, and then I folded again into a triangle. So that's what you're going to have. So the major measurements we need for this is the waist and your length. So now what we're going to do is, to my waist, I'm working with 32 inches plus 2 inches for my zipper. Now I'll advise you to add more than 2 inches, especially because of the side seams. You're also going to join it by the sides, so I advise you to add 4 inches to your normal waist. And then because we're doing a half circle, we're going to divide that by 3.14. so whatever you get, that will be what you use to get the circumference of the waistline. And then you need your full length, including your hemming allowance of 1 inch. You don't need more than 1 inch for this. Now from the apex of my fold here, this is where I will be taking my measurement. I'm going to pin my fabric down so that it doesn't move while I'm taking my measurement. Okay, so these are the little things you need to take note of while you're doing yours. Now placing the my tape from the starting point, just like I have here, I'm going to mark what I have, right? So I got about 10 inches. I'm just marking that down, and I'm going to follow that through and mark it together. So you're going to make sure your tape is at the tip while you're marking this 10 inches. Like I said earlier, ensure to add more than 2 inches, because you will need for your zipper allowance at the back, and then you also need for your side seam joining allowance. So now I'm adding ½ inch at the top, which will be for joining when I'm attaching my band to my piece. So if you want your skirt to the waistline to be big, you want to use an elastic, then you have to use your hip measurement instead. So now that I've got this, what I'm going to do is to take the full measurement of what I want. So this is a maxi skirt. It means it gets to the floor, like it needs to pour to the ground. So go ahead and take that measurement. If you want yours to be short also, you can absolutely do that. Okay, you can just stop your skirt wherever you want it to end. So I'm going to just take this to the full length where I want mine to end. You can also make this bigger. The reason why I'm advising for you to add more allowances, unlike the 2 inches I added, was because for mine, before placing my band, I actually wore this around my waist and it was a bit too tight. Okay, fixing my zipper was a problem, so I had to reduce the waistline again to be able to do that. So I advise you to add an extra if you don't want to be going over this like I did for mine. So I actually marked my full length from the second line. You can see where I placed my tape roll, and I just marked it all round. So you're going to do it just the same way you did for your waist area. Mark it all round and then connect your points together. So now that we have this is what you need. So remember to add your hemming allowance to the end. Okay, whatever length you're using for your skirt, also add your hemming allowance. So now we go in with our scissors to just cut it out. So you can see the remaining I have. Okay, what I had here, it wasn't useful after this, so I used 3 yards, okay, for this full effect of the skirt. So this is what I have now. Like I said, I'm going to be joining this by the side. If you don't want to add pockets, you don't need to split that open. So because I'm joining this by the sides, I'm going to split it open. So you want to split from where you have your both ends closed, so you can join them and then attach your pockets to them. So you notice that on the other side you have a closed end. Please don't cut out where you have a closed end, because your center front needs to be closed up, it doesn't need to be open. So from there, now I'm going to measure where I want my pocket to start from. So I'm taking it from the second line, which is the actual measurement I marked for my waist. I came down by 1 inch, that is where my pocket is going to sit from, and then I made a notch at that point. So now we have this. So it's actually quite easy to cut out if you understand the basic measurements to take. So this one we have on the table is the center back. This is the back piece. So we have 2 pieces for our back. So now I'm going to keep this aside and we'll go ahead to cut out the band. So initially I didn't take out my band measurement while I was cutting out the skirt. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to just cut it out. It means that my skirt is going to be longer than the actual length I wanted it to be. So ensure to minus your band measurement first before taking your length. All right, so I'm taking I want my band to be 1.5 inches wide by the time I finish stitching. What I did was to mark my round waist. You can see my fabric is on fold, plus that extra 2 inches which I added for my zip allowance, and then I'm going to mark 4 inches from that line upwards. Okay, because I want my band to be 1.5 inches by the time I finish doing this. You can see me remeasuring and ensuring that I was on track. So you can use a bigger band for your, say, 2 inches. You can use a 1.5 inch. You can use 1 inch band, whatever you feel works best for you. Most times I used to advise when making long skirts to use small bands. So I just I'm not a small tiny band kind of person, so I worked with 1.5 inches instead of using 2 inches. Okay, so if you want to use 1 inch, you can absolutely do that. Okay, so now that we have our band, I'm going to cut out the pocket. So you can see that my fabric is finished. Okay, you can use more than 3 yards. I think if you're making a 360-degree flare, you're going to exhaust more than 3 yards. So I'm going to use this first to draft out, like to just make a little curve, cut out the pattern for the pocket, and then use this to cut out extra 3, because we'll be needing 4 on each side. So the width of the pocket opening I have here is 7 inches. That is what I'm using for mine. You can make your pockets longer, you can make it deeper, you can make it wider, whatever works for you. However you love your pocket to turn out. But I actually like my pockets this way. It's just nice, just a little extra touch to my skirt. So I'm just going to use this to trace out extra 3 patterns that I'll be using to place on my skirt piece. So now that we're done with cutting our piece, I'm just going to make a notch for the top part. This is actually very confusing most times to me even. So I just made a notch for the top part of my pocket. Now I'm going to start off by attaching my pocket to my piece. Okay, stitching it down is as easy as cutting it out. So I'm going to be placing my pocket to my skirt. So whatever I do to the front part of my fabric, I'm going to repeat to the back. I will place this right side to right side, and I'll stitch it down by 1/2 inch, and I'll bring in the other piece and do the same thing and repeat the same process for the back piece. So this is what I have for the front. After I finish stitching this is what it looks like. And then for my back piece, since I have that too, I also stitch the pocket like I said I would. Okay, so now you can see me measuring this. This was where I realized that I had an issue. Okay, so it's smaller than my waist. So like I advised earlier, ensure to add your stitching allowance as a side seam allowance, and if you are unable to do that, you just have to trim your waistline down again for it to enter. So now we're going to place our front to the back, right side to right side, and pin it down. Okay, so work with your pins, just pin it down at the various focal points. After pinning down, we're going to stitch. So what I did for my own stitching, you're supposed to stitch by 1 inch, but what I stitched for mine was half of an inch. That's because I had less inches to work with, stitching allowance to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch it down, but I'm going to pin first so that I can stitch this down easily, especially because of the pockets I am attaching to my piece. So you're going to start by stitching. If you're stitching by 1 inch, stitch by 1 inch at the waist, and then go into the pocket by ½ inch, continue by 1 inch to the full length. For me, I used ½ inch all through. So this is what I have after I finish doing that. You can see how nice it looks. So now I'm aligning the center back of my piece. I want to attach my zip and then close it down. So you're going to measure where you want your zip to end. I'm using 8 inches for mine, and then from that end I'm going to stitch by 1 inch to the end also. All right, so just go ahead and stitch that to the end, to the full length of your skirt. So this is what I have. I also ironed open that seam there so that it looks perfect. So at this point I actually wore my skirt and noticed that it was not going to fit. All right, so we're going to fix the band, the zip first. Sorry, this is the zipper. I fixed my zipper to the opening which I have at the top, and I'm going to cut out the excess I have. So I used an invisible small head zip for the skirt. You can use whatever zip you feel will work best for you. Okay, so since I have this now, I want to fix hook and eye to my piece, so that is why I'm fixing my zipper first. So now I'm going to bring in the band. This is the band. I'm going to get the midpoint of my band. Now I've gone ahead to iron interfacing to the band, and then I folded ½ of an inch on both sides and folded it again so that I can have 1½ inches. Okay, so these things are the little things you need to take note of while you're making your clothes. Okay, especially for band, because most times I notice that when you don't take your measurements properly, they start folding at various ends. You have some side bigger than the other. So now I'm taking note of the center of my skirt, of my band, and then I'll take note of the center of the skirt also. So this is because I want to start pinning them together. Now my band is actually longer than what I have around the waistline. It's about 2 inches longer because of the hook and eye. They have to cross and meet. So now that I've made the mark at the center front, I'm going to go with my pins, place it, the band, right side of my band to the wrong side of my skirt. So we're stitching from inside out, and then I'll follow with the ironed line I have and stitch it down on both ends by ½ of an inch. So this is what it looks like from this point. Now I'm going to flip it over to the front. So what I did here, I actually stitched from front to back. So don't be like me, stitch from back to front instead, because I actually went ahead 2 changes. Yeah, so make sure you follow through with what I'm saying. I just changed that. So I'm going to stitch that off the front. Yeah, and then I'll take off the excess I have, because you don't want this to be too much at the back. You're not using that to do anything. So I'm taking off the excess. I just have enough that I can use to fix my hook and eye and cross them comfortably against each other. So now we're going to just flip this way, stitch this part here. Okay, so we close that end, and then you repeat the same thing on the other side. So this is what it looks like after I finished. I'll use my comb to just bring out the sharp corners so that it's looking nice and clean, and then I'll go ahead to just tuck in the rough ends and use the other part I have to stitch it. So use this other part to close what you have there all around. So this is what it looks like after I finished. You can see how nice this looks. Okay, this is very, 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 very beautiful. So now we're going to go over to the machine, and I'll show you how to hem the edge of your skirt. So you're going to start by folding ½ inch first, and then stitch very close to the folded end. So we are going to fold in ½ of an inch and stitch very close to the folded end. So when making flare skirts, this is the best way to actually fold the hem. You can also go ahead to just interlock the ends, that's to weave it, okay, if you don't want to do this. So you're going to fold this, stitch it down at the very end, and then take off the excess. Okay, I'm not going to show all that sewing process. So I finished stitching and I'm taking off the excess that I have. You can see me trimming this off. After doing this, you want to give that a very good press. Okay, so this is what it looks like. Now you're going to fold it again. All right, remember we added just 1 inch for this stitching allowance. Fold again by half of an inch again, and then you're going to stitch on top of the first line, the stitching line you had initially. Okay, this will help to have a fine finishing. So you stitch on top of that line you had initially, stitch it all through. Okay, just take your time and stitch all through this. Like I said, if you don't want to do this, you can go ahead to just interlock the edge, okay, or whatever way you know how to hem your circle skirt base. Just go ahead to do that, whatever way works for you. So I'll just do this all through, and after doing that, I'll give this a good press and I'll show you what I have. So this is what it looks like. You can see this is what it looks like. So ensure to iron this very well so that it's not folding in. Okay, by the time you finish doing this, if you do this very well and give it a good press, it's going to be looking spectacular. So this is the skirt back to the table. Now what we want to do is to fix the hook and eye. So you can cross it whatever way you want to cross the hook, to the right, the eye to the left, whatever way you want to cross it. So I'm just marking where I want mine to be placed. I'm placing my eye to the left and then placing the hook to the right, and I'm going to stitch this off camera. Okay, I'll use my hand needle to just stitch this in place to finish up my skirt. So this is what it looks like after I finish doing that. You can see that this this is actually an easy skirt to make. So you want to go ahead to give this a really good press, and that brings us to the end of the video. Thank you for watching. Ensure to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Bye.